we are back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast, bringing you our second segment. Now, before we do that, I would like to ask you again to please like and follow the show. Please do donate as well at gsmcpodcast.net. It really does help me, really does help the show, really does help everyone here at the network. So thank you so much for that, and let's get back into the show here. So, we're going to be talking about our second segment here, which, as I previewed before the break, is going to be about the Dodgers superstar pitcher, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Now, Yamamoto has really struggled since coming over to the MLB, something I did not expect, to be perfectly honest. But I think we're going to talk about the problems I think that are going on and just what could be happening. So, just going over a little bit, Yamamoto had an 8.38 ERA in spring, which obviously, if you know anything about baseball, that's not very good. That would mean he would be giving up 8 earned runs if he went 9 innings every start. Again, not good. Not good in the slightest. So I think a lot of people figure, okay, it's just growing pains for spring, nothing too much to be worried about. Spring training results don't really matter. I agree with that personally. I think it's more about the process than the actual results, if that does make sense. I think you're just trying to test out everything, and there was a lot of luck involved with baseball, and I think spring training is indicative of that and shows you shouldn't be that worried about results come this time. So I wasn't really worried about that as a guy who is super high in Yamamoto. But now, going into his first start, he pitched 1 inning, gave up 5 earned runs. That's not good in the slightest. Padres aren't a horrible lineup, but they're also not the best. They're not a team like the Braves or the Diamondbacks or someone like that, the Phillies. They're a good lineup, but they're not a great one. It gets weaker as it goes down. So for me, that was a little bit worrying. And going into his first MLB inning, his only MLB inning, he gave up a single, then a hit by pitch, then a 2 RBI triple, then a walk, then a sacrifice fly, a wild pitch, a strikeout, an RBI double, an RBI single, and then a strikeout. So what I see here, first of all, is yes, he got 2 strikeouts, but the other out he got was a sacrifice fly, so he's still giving up contact, presumably hard contact. So that was a little bit worrying to me. Also, just the amount of hits he got. He gave a single, a 2 RBI triple, an RBI double, and then another RBI single. So that's definitely worrying if I am a Dodgers fan, because he was hanging pitches. You could tell a lot of pitches were not supposed to be where they were pitched. They were just hanging over the strike zone, not going into great places. So that wasn't great. Another thing I would be worried about is the command problems. He was always known for having great command, so giving up a hit by pitch, a walk, and a wild pitch is very out of character for him. So that is another thing I would be notable about if I was a Dodgers fan, watching the command problems, something that is, again, kind of worrying, but not in the same sense. I'll explain it more. So overall, what I would say is, I would ask, am I worried as a baseball fan? A guy who's very high in Yamamoto, a guy who's been following him for years now, a guy I wanted the Mets to get for years. Obviously, we were close. We were in the top 3, but we didn't get him. Am I worried? Yes and no. So first, let's start off with the yes. I think anytime you have an 8.38 ERA in spring and give up 5 earned runs in your first inning as a major league pitcher, that's up for some concern. You have to look at that as you're not going to look at that as a positive in no way, shape, or form. That's just a fact, obviously. So that obviously is something to watch. That is something to see, to talk about. You never want to see that happen. But overall, I'm not worried in the big picture because I think he'll be fine. I think he just has a sheer amount of stuff that is just purely incredible, that I think overall the worries about him will go away, and I think he'll find himself eventually. There's so many factors going into Yamamoto and so many new things he has to learn being an MLB pitcher that it's honestly incredible. And there's so much stuff. First of all, he has to learn an entirely new language. I'm sure he knows some English, but not a lot. As just relaying it to my personal experience, I've been learning Spanish in public school since 7th grade, and only thing I know how to say is hola. So I think learning a new language is something that's very overlooked with younger players coming over to an entirely new country. I couldn't move to Japan for a job. Couldn't communicate with anyone. So I think that's something you have to look for with Yamamoto, giving it a human side of it. This is a big step for him, a big step for a person, a 25-year-old guy, Again, we look at him as amazing baseball pitcher who got $300 million. Yes, all that's true, but there's a human inside there. There's a guy who has to move to an entirely different country, away from his friends and family, learning a whole different culture, speaking a whole new language, speaking to people who don't know what he's saying because they don't really know Japanese that well. So I think there's a lot of that as well. There is some things there that he is probably still getting adjusted to all this. Yes, he has a translator, but that's just a middleman. That's not him talking, really. So I think you have to look at that. Second of all, I think there's a lot of changes with MLB to the MPB. First of all, the competition. The competition is undoubtedly better. MPB to me is probably like 4A. It's better than AAA, but worse than MLB. So it's not a league to be, it's not a league to just discount and say this, your results mean nothing over here. That definitely means something, and it's definitely a very good league. But it's also not something where you say, okay, this is very indicative to what the MLB is. This is very similar. So I think you have to look at it that way as well, that he is coming to an entirely new league where the competition is better. He's also facing guys like Manny Machado now, Fernando Tatis Jr., Ha-Sung Kim, Drake Cronenworth. Like, these guys are great hit players and great veterans. So I think you look at it that way as well. Xander Bogaerts, who I didn't even mention. So I think you're looking at it that way as well. Also, another thing is the balls. The ball in MPB is much different than the MLB baseball. From what I know is that the MLB baseball is different in size, and there also is some sticky stuff applied in the MPB by itself to help you better with that. So I believe that is true. If it is not true, I do apologize, but that is what I have read and learned. So there's a lot of differences in the ball as well. I know Kodai Senga last year had some trouble with that. So there's a lot of things you have to learn as an MPB player coming over to the MLB, really as an international player as well. There's a lot of things you have to learn. You have to change about your lifestyle. Again, you're coming over to a whole new country. Could you, watching this video right now, go to a new country and live there off the rip? That's a very big transition. Also, yes, has he been preparing himself to move to the U.S. for a long time? Probably. But it's a difference between preparing yourself and going there. So I just taken a little bit of the human side as well. I think that you have to look at it that way. I think a lot about it is pressure as well. He's getting $300 million before throwing an MLB pitch. So I think there is some nerves there. There is some little bit of, he's feeling the pressure now of who he is playing in a big market. So I think that's there as well. And another thing with pitchers is the battery mate. I don't think he's ever thrown to Will Smith before in his entire life. So he's learning a whole new command system with his new catcher, who is also one of the better guys in the league. So he could feel overwhelmed there. So you're learning to pitch to a whole new guy. You're learning to communicate in different ways. Battery mate is something that a lot of pitchers feel very connected to. Someone that really helps them a lot. I mean, even last year, Blake Snell talked about how much Gary Sanchez was helpful to him winning that Cy Young. And I think that's another thing you have to watch for, like, just going for Blake Snell. Is he going to perform a little worse this year with the Giants because his battery mate isn't there, the guy he feels most comfortable with, a guy who he knows how he frames to know where to pitch it. He knows when he lays down the fingers between his glove to call a pitch, he knows what he's talking about. He knows the code they talk in. So there's a lot of things for an international player coming over, and specifically for a pitcher. So there's a lot of factors going on here. So am I worried about Yamamoto? Again, yes and no. Yes, because these things aren't great to start off your career. An 8 ERA in spring and then 5 earned runs in your first MLB innings pitched in a real game. Of course, not great. But there's so many other factors going on that I don't feel overwhelmingly worried that he's just going to be a big bust. So, again, the one thing with pitchers is, do they have great stuff? Yamamoto does. Yamamoto has absolutely electric, incredible stuff, and that's why we know of at least 5 teams that offer him $300 million. So I think that's definitely something to watch here and, see why these teams did it. Because there's a reason. They project him to be an amazing player, and I think he will be. And overall, I'm not that worried about him. I still think he'll be a great player. Look, the Dodgers knew this going in. They knew it wasn't going to be a clean transition. They knew that he was going to start it a little bit slow. Every pitcher's different. I know Senga jumped right into there last year, didn't really have a problem, but he's older. Yamamoto's only 25, so there's a lot of factors here, and I'm not worried about Yamamoto, and I think he'll be fine. So that's really my thoughts on it. After that, again, I've talked about the Dodgers and their rotation having some question marks, mainly because of Yamamoto. Yamamoto's great. Again, I love him. I think he's going to be an amazing pitcher in the league, but it's his first year coming over to MLB. That is something that you have to talk about with him. He's going over to this league for the first time. He is a rookie, so you don't know how he's going to perform. After that, you have Tyler Glasnow. He's had some pitching injuries in the past. He is always a risk. You have other rookies like Bobby Miller. You have, of course, Emmett Sheehan, who's not starting the year there, but is a guy who is a rookie, is going to be pitching meaningful innings. So rookies, of course, are always going to have question marks about them because it is their first season pitching significant innings. So I think you have to look at it that way as well. You also have James Paxton, who got injured, who they showed an injury during his physical, so that's another thing as well. Gavin Stone, who won the 5th starting job, again, injury, and you don't know what's going to happen with him because he is a rookie. Walker Buehler's coming off injury, so is Clayton Kershaw. So when those guys come in as well. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot of risks for the Dodgers rotation, I think more than some people would like to admit. So that's something I'm watching here, and that's something I want to see. So it's going to be interesting to see how their rotation does perform going into the season. But overall, tying it back to Yamamoto, I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be pretty great, so I'm not that worried. So that was my second segment, talking about Yoshinobu Yamamoto and his struggles coming into the MLB so far. We're going to be going to our third segment, which is going to be talking about Michael Lorenzen and him signing with the Texas Rangers, and just my overall thoughts on it. One of the free agents finally signing. Only a few more to go before I can do my off-season grades, which I've been dying to do, so really excited for that. So we'll be getting into that, but first we'll be taking our second break of the show and going into our segment 3. So thanks. See you after that. Bye.